Well, good morning. Welcome to Greenhide. My name is Jerome Scott and I'm here with my glamorous brewery assistant Georgina Scott, who's a little bit under the weather today, but we're still brewing up a storm here. So I arrived in New Zealand about 18 months ago and had been brewing on and off for probably about 15 years, using the typical traditional homebrew approaches with buckets and carboys and all sorts of contraptions, and destroying the kitchen over an 8-hour period, and the usual story. And a friend of mine was actually working on the launch of the WilliamsWarn, and that's how I got introduced to it. So we gave Ian a call and said, can we come down and try the beer? So I thought this could be quite an interesting contraption. So we went down. We had a taste of the beer, and it was absolutely delicious. So I thought, well, we might as well get one of these as soon as possible, and see how we go. So we got the unit a couple of weeks later, and this is a Generation 1, the mighty WilliamsWarn 53 that's been brewing pretty much non-stop for the last 18 months. And so yes, I started with, I had done some brewing in the past with different kits and whatnot, and all grain brewing. But I started off with the WilliamsWarn kits that come with the machine. And the first beer came out 7 days as advertised, completely crystal clear, carbonated, beautiful, no off flavors, no fermentation faults, just clean, lovely beer in the 7 days, and we couldn't really believe it. It was just fantastic. So from there, that was a sort of springboard to getting more adventurous with the brewing. So we moved on there to extract with grains. So using some specialty grains that we have here for steeping. You put those in a steeping bag, a grain bag, and then you can add them just as you would in with the regular kit, and it gives you a bit more color, a bit more flavor. You can play around, and then adding hops because one of the things coming down to New Zealand, which I hadn't realized, was this huge craft beer scene with these enormous hoppy beers, these big IPAs, and we just never really tasted anything like that in the UK. So we got to work brewing some of those using some good New Zealand hops, some Motueka hops, mixing it in with the French press method that's described in the user manual, where you can just use a hot water plunger to make a hop tea, and then you can just pour it in, and then moved on from there into dry hopping. So actually using dry pelletized hops in a hop bag into the fermenter itself to get that very strong hop aroma and flavor going, that is very sort of evocative of the craft beer scene in New Zealand at the moment. So from there, it was then the natural progression was that I wanted to get back into the grain brewing, which is the purpose of all this paraphernalia here, and to do a full grain, a full mash brew. It's about a 5-hour process using this equipment here. So there's mash tuns and kettles and hot liquor tanks and all these things, and it's a 5-hour process. And one of the things that I'd found doing this brewing in the past was that you could spend 5 hours doing a very precision and controlled brew, because this equipment looks a bit sort of rumpty, but it is in fact very good at holding very precise temperatures for the starch conversions and all the things that you're doing when you're doing a mash. And so I would spend all this time creating these very precise temperature environments to create the beer in the first place, and then it would go into a fermenter in an airing cupboard or wrapped in a blanket, or I tried water baths with a light bulb and nearly electrocuted myself. I mean, so you go through all these things. And then on the fermentation side, you can have these fluctuations, and then after a 5-hour process, you then put it into this bucket, and you can possibly very easily wreck your beer, or at least sometimes it came out really well, and sometimes it didn't come out so well, and it's quite hit and miss. And so this is why I was quite interested in this, the WilliamsWarn, for the very controlled fermentation environment. So you can very precisely set the temperatures of the fermentation as it's going. And so you know that the yeast has got the perfect environment to do its work. So your 5 hours of hard graft making the beer in the first place is replicated and carried on in the process to get very, very clean fermentation. And also, if you're doing things like, if you want to make lagers in the summer, it's very difficult because you've got to be fermenting down at 10, 11, 12 degrees, something like that. And then if you want to raise the temperature to do your diacetyl rest, this is quite hard as well, because you'd have to then find a mechanism either with a fridge with a temperature controller on it and a probe stuck in the side of your plastic bucket or whatever, all these things that you have to go through to make temperature fluctuations. With this, it's just a case of turning the knob. Up to 18, 2 days, diacetyl rest, lager's done. So the end-to-end process for making the lager is about 9 days, and it comes out crisp and beautiful and ready to drink. And so that's the other thing. The quick sort of turnaround on creating the beer is, I need to be producing 40 pints a week to keep up with the supply that I need for my in-laws. So it's no good me making a beer, putting it down, and then having to wait for 6-8 weeks while it then carbonates in the bottle to give to them, and I can't then sort of shake it up or transport it because all the sediment will get stirred up again, and they'll have to leave it to settle before they're pouring it. So all this sort of thing was a bit of a headache around the homebrewing thing for me. So with this, because all the sediment drops out at the end, and we can just take it all off and we bottle it each week. The 23 litres, the 40 pints comes straight out of the brewery and into through the bottling unit and into the bottles. And I use the tap now for just taking samples and gravity readings during the fermentation process, rather than drinking it, because it's basically each week it's just fermented into the bottle, done, and then shipped off to the in-laws, next brew, and the process continues. So that's kind of where we're at now, and we're 18 months later, probably 50 or 60 brews done of all different types, lagers, very, very strong Scotch ales, porters, American ales, big IPAs. We've done the whole 9 yards in the machine. So it's been it hasn't had any sort of downtime really. I think the longest it hasn't been brewing has been about a week when I was away, and then that was it. Apart from that, it's been constant brewing. So we're quite empty at the moment. We haven't. These are all the Asia Beer Award beers. So we've got the Saison on the left, and then these are all American amber ales that are made with an American amber ale kit, and I added into there just basically some Citra hops and some Mochueka hops, and dry hop that for about 4 days. So it's just the basic WilliamsWarn kit with extra hops.